Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I got a great episode lined up for you today. If you're not already a subscriber, subscribe and follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends. It's 2024. It's a presidential election year. There's a lot at stake and a lot going on. We just had the special counsel, Robert Hur, send political shockwaves throughout the United States. And the Democrats, as well as the media, they're in a panic. Now, it's not that Robert Hur's report confirmed anything we didn't already know, but the report has forced the media to put a spotlight on the president's obvious cognitive decline. We have the Biden document case, where the president took classified information as a senator and a vice president, documents that he never should have had in the first place, and the report is scathing. It lambasts the president for his actions, as he had no authority to take or retain these documents, and as a senator and vice president, he had no authority to declassify these documents. In any event, the special counsel said that President Biden committed several crimes. However, they don't see how they can prosecute him and get a conviction given the current state of President Biden's cognitive abilities. He portrayed Biden as a feeble old man unaware of basic facts and information. Biden often appears confused. We all see the pictures. We see it on our television screens. He can't remember critical dates like when he finished his term as vice president. He doesn't remember the date of his son's passing. He sits there and gives speeches, rambles on. He talks about having conversations with leaders that have been dead for nearly 30 years. And if you read the report, it's actually sad and depressing. It raises so many important questions, but President Biden and his allies, they've come out swinging, attacking Robert Hur in his report. They're attacking anyone who questions Biden's mental acuity. Democrats are even going after Merrick Garland now, the Attorney General of the United States, the one that's actually been protecting him for a long time. They're calling on Garland to resign since he's the one who appointed her and allowed the report to be released, as if we, the American people, don't have a right to know the cognitive capabilities of our president, of the president of these United States, the leader of the free world. But this report isn't just an indictment on President Biden. It's an indictment on his entire administration and everyone that is trying to hide the fact that President Biden is mentally unfit for office. See, the situation, it's a catch-22 for the president and his administration. He is either mentally cognizant of everything going on and has his mental faculties intact, or he is a feeble old man at the end stages of his life who wouldn't be able to stand trial because he can't remember anything. Well, wouldn't that make him unfit for office? And if his mental abilities are intact, doesn't that make him fit to stand trial when he serves his term? See, this is a mutual contradiction. You can't have two exact opposite statements, both being true. If President Biden is fit to serve as President of the United States, then he certainly should be able to answer simple and basic questions. He should be able to stand trial once his term in office is over. If he is unable to stand trial because of his declining cognitive abilities, then he is not fit to serve in the most demanding job that exists. The presidency is an extremely demanding job. Look at how presidents age during their time in office. It's a lot of stress, a lot of complex decision-making, decisions that can mean the life and death for a lot of people. Are we really going to sit here and pretend that this is okay, that it's normal? There is so much going on both domestically and abroad, and this has now become a national security issue because it's dangerous. It is dangerous that we're sitting here having a conversation of whether or not President Biden is fit to serve in office. What do you think? Our adversaries aren't watching abroad? You think they're not paying attention? They know American politics better than most Americans do. And so they're looking at what's going on, and they're seeing with their own eyes, with their own ears, that there's really no leadership. Who is in charge of this system today? Who is the one making the decisions? Who is the one that is calling the shot? Now, when President Biden came out to give his speech, how dare you question my mental abilities? And then he goes on and he mixes up Mexico and Egypt.
Come on, give me a break, man.
This really is insane, and that's what this episode will focus on. I want to discuss the implications of this report. I want to explore what's going on with the Democrats and the impact that something like this has on the international landscape that is growing far more dangerous each and every day. The international system is growing far more unstable each and every day. And so what does it mean on a global scale? I also want to discuss what it means for the state of the 2024 presidential race. I mean, this is certainly the most unpredictable presidential election that we have ever witnessed. Anyone that tells you that they know how this election plays out is kidding yourself. I mean, every single day there's something new that is going to change the dynamics of this race. And be prepared. There's going to be bombshells peppered throughout the 2024 season. So this is an episode you're not going to want to miss, and I'm going to give my take on it all when we get back from this quick break. So hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. And with the Her Report, you have a lot going on, and it appears that you have Democrats and the media, they seem to be split right now. Some view this as a disaster, and they're having serious conversations about whether President Biden can and should remain on the 2024 ballot. More on that in a little bit. Others are bashing her for including the president's cognitive abilities in this report. They're saying it's unfair, that this is an underhanded attack on President Biden, that this is nothing more than a partisan hack that's trying to do a hatchet job and hurt Biden's chances in 2024. Some are even comparing it to Comey and the 2016 Clinton emails. But here's what they don't realize. They don't realize that Biden's mental capacity is material to the investigation. The fact that President Biden had classified material when he wasn't supposed to was established immediately at the launch of this investigation. The fact that the material was willfully taken was established immediately. The fact that this material was stored at the Penn Biden Center, in his garage next to his Corvette, at a business office in Washington, D.C., in Chinatown, that was already established when the case was opened. The fact that people had access to this material when they weren't supposed to was clear. The fact that Biden disclosed classified information was established early on in this investigation. So the question of the entire investigation wasn't about, did Biden willfully take classified information that he wasn't supposed to? The question of the entire investigation was, should criminal charges be brought against the current president for when he leaves office? And the only way to really determine that is to look at the mental capabilities of the President of the United States. Does he remember when or how and why the documents were taken in the first place? Does he remember who had access to these documents? What was potentially divulged from these documents? And the special counsel concluded that President Biden, well, he doesn't know much of anything. Now, the president is defending himself, stating that his mental abilities are just fine and that the whole classified documents thing, it was just a misunderstanding. It was an accident. He accidentally took classified documents as a senator and as a vice president, put them in boxes, transported them for the next several decades, but it was all an accident. They just recently found this. What the president is saying is contradicted in her report. See, Biden, he says that the documents were secure, it was all accidental, but we know for a fact that they weren't secure. The president is lying, just sitting there, throwing out lie after lie after lie. Now, some are trying to equivocate this to the Trump documents case. Some are even arguing that the Trump case is far worse. And these people, they must have gotten into Hunter Biden's stash, because if they truly believe that, they're insane. There are key differences in these cases. Biden had these documents for decades from his days as a senator and as a vice president. Trump had these documents for a couple years after he left office. And it was the General Services Administration, a U.S. organization within the federal government, federal agency, that actually helped pack up these boxes when Trump was leaving the White House and bringing these documents down to Mar-a-Lago. Biden's documents were transported numerous times throughout this 40-year period, but we're supposed to believe that he totally forgot that he had these classified documents. He didn't really know, even though they were brought from location to location. Do you really believe that his team just happened to stumble across these documents right before the midterm elections, as everyone knew that Republicans would probably become the majority in the House, and as President Trump was being charged with possession of classified documents? Do you think that's a coincidence in politics? Because there are no coincidences in politics. The whole reason that President Biden's team reached out to the Attorney General a couple of days before the midterm elections was because they know that once Republicans took over the House, they would start launching investigations into Team Biden. And if they stumbled across these documents, it would look really bad that a former president is being charged with mishandling classified information when the current president has mishandled classified information for the last 40 years. That would look really bad. Then there is the fact that Biden had no ability to classify the documents as a sitting senator or as a vice president. They do not have that power. Trump does have declassification authority. Now, whether or not former President Trump officially declassified the documents in his possession, that we don't really know, right? That will come out at trial. And what does official declassification really mean? I mean, no one can actually sit here and tell me, well, the official declassification process is X, Y, and Z, that you must fill out Federal Form 2312, and that's how we declassify documents. There's actually no standard protocols in how to declassify documents as a president of the United States. And it's not like we have any policies or procedures that a president must follow to declassify documents. Then you look at the locations. Trump's documents were at Mar-a-Lago, where there is Secret Service protection. The government was aware of the documents, particularly the National Archives and the FBI, and they even made sure that the room was secure by adding cameras. They had to include padlocks, and there were talks going on between Team Trump and the National Archives and the FBI. Now, whether or not Trump tried to circumvent the process, whether or not the talks were going nowhere, there were negotiations happening. However, the charges against President Trump say that he was obstructing, that he was obfuscating. So we see that. Again, that will come out at trial. But let's look at where the Biden documents were stored. They were stored in unlocked closets on a college campus, the Penn Biden Center. They were stored in his garage next to his Corvette. They were stored at an office building in Chinatown, in the Chinatown section of D.C. Now, we know that there are records of anyone and everyone who goes to Mar-a-Lago each and every day, who goes onto the property and off the property. We know that. So we could get a listing of all the people that have visited the Trump White House and were in close proximity to those documents. We have no idea who came in close proximity or even who had access to the Biden documents. Remember, it was his quote-unquote staff that found these documents and then alerted the Attorney General of the United States. And his staff, well, they actually didn't have the clearance to even review these documents, yet that's exactly what they did. Another crime right there. But the biggest difference is that the former president was criminally charged. Now, if you're a Trump supporter, you could say the charges are politically motivated. If you despise Trump, you could say he shouldn't have taken these documents and he tried obstructing justice. However, what you cannot argue with is the fact that he is now facing criminal prosecution, regardless of what you think of the former president. He is being criminally charged. Now, some are arguing that, well, President Biden cooperated with the special counsel's team and Trump didn't. That's why Trump was charged and Biden wasn't. Again, this is a lie that's being put on the American people. This is trying to obfuscate what the real situation is. Cooperation is meaningless when it comes to charges. Meaningless. It doesn't matter if you cooperate. The only time cooperation gets taken into consideration is when you're being sentenced. That's when cooperation matters. If you have cooperated, you receive a lighter sentence. If you didn't cooperate, you receive a harsher sentence. But as far as criminal charges go, cooperation doesn't matter. Others say it's about intent, that Trump knowingly took these documents, where Biden accidentally took these documents. Again, this is a lie. You don't accidentally remove documents from a SCIF, because said documents are not allowed to be removed from a SCIF. And you are very limited in what you could bring into a SCIF. Now, let's say we take Biden at his word. Let's say that he went into a SCIF and he inadvertently placed these materials in a file in his briefcase or something. Now, that's far-fetched to begin with, but let's just say he did. Well, once he returned to his office and went through his briefcase, why weren't the documents returned? And it wasn't just that he took documents. It was also the fact that he would jot down notes of classified information on pieces of paper and remove that as well. Again, it has to be classified. Can't do that. Now, are we really going to say that it's not willful? If you're taking notes, writing down classified information, you are willfully doing that. You know you're not supposed to be doing that. You're taking it out of the secure area and you're bringing it to your home or wherever. So we know that it's a lie. It's all a lie. And the truth is that every single one of President Biden's arguments and defenses are falling flat because everyone knows they're lies. And it's ironic how this administration has declared war on what they deem as misinformation and disinformation. They have labeled misinformation and disinformation as a major source of domestic terrorism. And so it's a priority of this administration to silence and censor anyone that's engaged in these types of activities. They have silenced and censored millions of Americans, denying them their inherent rights. Yet all this administration does, all this administration and the Democrat enablers do, is engage in misinformation and disinformation day in and day out. And then you have those claiming that President Biden was exonerated of any wrongdoing. He wasn't exonerated if you read the report. He was excused of wrongdoing. There is a big difference between being exonerated and being excused for not being mentally capable to stand trial. But the real problem to me, it isn't President Biden. I actually think it's sad what's going on with him. And I'm not denying that he didn't do something wrong. He certainly did. But time and time again, we have seen officials mishandle classified information with little consequence, including previous presidents, Hillary Clinton, others. We've seen this happen before. Now we're going to make a big deal about it. And the only reason that we're making a big deal about it isn't because of President Biden, because he had these classified documents. Let's just say the former president of the United States was never charged with mishandling classified documents. Let's just say President Trump didn't take anything, or he cooperated with the investigation, gave everything back, whatever it is. Do you really think a special counsel would have ever been appointed in the Biden case? No, he would have simply returned the documents and no one would have known better. Okay, so to me, it's not to say that those mishandling classified information shouldn't be held accountable. What I'm saying is that we should hold everyone to the same standard. If we're going to go after former President Trump, if we're going to go after President Biden about this, if we're going to go after these two, well, why not go after everyone that took classified information, including former presidents, including Hillary Clinton? Why not do it to everyone? One standard for everyone. That's the way a just society works, but we don't have that. However, it's not Biden that I'm upset with. It's really not. It's the real villains in this are the ones who keep propping Biden up, pretending as if everything is just fine. The real villains are the ones trying to hide just how bad Biden's condition has become. They are the ones that are engaged in elder abuse. They are the ones who want to hide everything from the American public. They're the ones that are playing a dangerous game that has real-world consequences, and I'm going to explain that when we get back from this quick break. Welcome back, everyone. So it's clear that many in this administration and media, they know how serious President Biden's condition is and how he has rapidly deteriorated right before our eyes. Even from when they hid him during the campaign, he was already bad then in 2020. In the last 3 years, it's been a downward trend. And we have to be clear. It may sound harsh and mean, and I'm not trying to be. But President Biden is at the stage of his life where it's not like he's going to get any better. It is only going to get worse, and it's getting worse fast. Okay, when you're at this stage, the deterioration rapidly happens. Imagine Biden's reelected. What is he going to look like 2 years from now? Some in the Democrat orbit, they think they can hide Biden's worsening mental condition, but this isn't 1919. In 1919, Woodrow Wilson, he suffered a massive stroke. It left him completely incapacitated. His wife basically assumed the functions of running the executive branch until his term was over in 1921. However, the big difference between now and then was that there was no television in 1919. There were no 24/7 news networks, no internet, no social media. It was an entirely different world back then. You could actually hide a president. Those days are gone now. They don't exist. The president is much more powerful today than he was in 1919, and the president has a much greater spotlight than ever before. The president has to be out in front, and if he's not, it raises a number of questions. And the fact that President Biden's own team, his own team, turned down the Super Bowl interview says a lot. Every Super Bowl, the president usually does an interview, and it's usually a short, friendly interview. It's not like going to get into the deep, complicated weeds of policy issues, international conflicts that may be going on. But think about it this way. His staff doesn't even trust him to do that. His staff doesn't even trust him to go on a short interview with a friendly reporter to answer some simple questions. Yet we're supposed to trust him with the nuclear codes? We're supposed to trust him making key decisions on critical issues that impact our everyday lives? Think about how ridiculous that sounds. And even James Carville and Paul Begala are terrified. These are Clintonites. They are terrified. Now, we see what's happening on our television screens. We hear it every time Biden speaks. Republicans, Democrats, they're all paying attention to this. The media knows what's going on. However, more importantly, what is going through the minds of our adversaries? They already had little respect for this administration. When you look at Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, our adversaries have grown much more aggressive in the last few years. Do you think, again, that's not a coincidence? Just look at the world since Biden took office. We withdraw from Afghanistan, Putin invades Ukraine. Iran becomes much more aggressive throughout the Middle East, and there's little doubt that the Quds Force had some role in the October 7th attacks on Israel. Now we have their proxies conducting attacks throughout the Middle East. You have increased Chinese aggression in the Pacific, especially towards Taiwan, the Philippines, and even Vietnam. You have Maduro of Venezuela now moving troops and military assets to the border of Guyana, threatening to take over some of their territory. So new conflict may be brewing to our south. I'm keeping a close eye on that. Let you know when that starts developing. But nearly every continent has seen conflict since Biden has taken office. And we've seen the world grow much more unstable. Again, do you think these are coincidences? Do you think the aggression, the increasing aggression of our adversaries just happens to coincide with the continuing decline of Biden's mental capacity? And how much further will they push the envelope, given they don't really know who's calling the shots, but they have very little fear of President Biden. They don't respect him. They don't fear him. So the world is destabilized under President Biden's leadership. So at what point do we say enough? We can't sustain this. And unfortunately, what can the Democrats do at this point? I mean, think about it. They are in a bind. They're in a panic. They're also in a bind. Unfortunately for Democrats and Democrat voters, it's too late to have someone go through the primary process against Biden. Essentially, the only way to really replace him is at the convention, and that takes place in August, which means a really condensed campaign calendar, right? I mean, people run for president for well over a year. You're talking about if they select someone to replace Biden on the ticket in August, they're only going to have 2 months to really be able to campaign. I mean, that's a disaster. And how do you do it without inflaming some segment of the Democrat Party and starting a civil war within the Democrat Party? You know, the obvious heir apparent would be a vice president, which in this case is Kamala Harris. That would make sense. She's the current vice president. But it's clear that a lot of Democrats don't like her. Many of them don't have any faith in her. The leadership in the Democrat Party would rather go with someone else. And the only way I could see them deciding to go with Vice President Kamala Harris on the top of the ticket is if they believe that they already lost 2024, if they give up on the 2024 elections. They would let her take the top of the ticket to be the sacrificial lamb, and then they won't have to put up with her or worry about her in 2028. That's the only way I see them going with someone like Kamala Harris. Now, some are arguing that President Biden should be replaced with Gavin Newsom on the ticket. And I'm sure that Gavin Newsom, I am sure he is hoping for the nod. He's praying for the nod. He is in the background trying to set up how exactly he would do this. He's starting to look at himself in the mirror. He's a narcissist. He already constantly looks at himself in the mirror. Now he's looking and calling himself Mr. President. However, I hate to burst his bubble, but given that the Democrat Party is the party of identity politics and that race defines nearly every single policy issue, there would be a firestorm if Vice President Harris, the first female minority being passed up for a white guy like Gavin Newsom, that would create a firestorm. And while Newsom is waiting in the wings, he's not going to be a good choice replacing President Biden anyway, especially because he has other problems. Besides creating a civil war in the Democrat Party, he has many other problems. He could raise a lot of money, I'll give him that. However, he has little name recognition outside of California, New York, and Washington, D.C. Most of the country has no idea who Gavin Newsom is. And Gavin Newsom doesn't have a built-in national campaign apparatus. So I really don't see him being selected if Democrats decide to do a late swap on the presidential ticket. Then there's Michelle Obama, of course. Now, you can easily pass over Kamala Harris if it's Michelle Obama because she checks the boxes when it comes to color of skin and gender. She is someone that will also prevent a civil war from breaking out in the Democrat Party, that's for sure. Democrats would clearly unite behind her. She could raise more money than any other candidate out there. More money, guaranteed. And she has 100% name recognition. Plus, she also has her husband's national campaign apparatus at her disposal. So she could hit the ground running on day one if she is swapped with Joe Biden on the ticket. And Republicans should fear her most if she ran because she would most likely win. The good news is that she has rebuffed any talk about her possibly jumping into this race. She didn't like the White House the first go around. She enjoys her life and lifestyle. And would she really want to take over given the messes that the Biden administration has created? Does she want her name attached to the Democrat Biden failures? She is fairly well liked amongst Americans, and I don't believe she wants to put her reputation on the table. I don't believe she wants her reputation tarnished. So I think that she will continue to reject it. Then there is Hillary Clinton, and people are probably groaning right now. Oh, my God. But hear me out. She is someone that never gave up on 2016. She still thinks she should have been president. She's angry and bitter, and clearly she hasn't gotten over it. And notice how she has been making more and more media appearances. Nothing Clinton does is by accident. Nothing she does. She is cold. She is calculating. And she's not going to say, all right, point to me. Let me be the standard bearer of the party if we need to replace Joe Biden. But she is hoping that the Democrats do turn to her and say, we need you to rescue us for the 2024 presidential election. Understand, she has 100% name ID. She could raise a ton of money. And her 2016 campaign apparatus was never dismantled. It could be turned on almost instantly. Don't ever underestimate the ambitions of Hillary Clinton. She's extremely ambitious. So put it this way, if President Biden announced that he was unable to run for re-election because of health concerns and they have to pick someone at the convention, my money is actually going to be on her. To me, she is the most logical choice. Now, some of you will be like, oh, well, she's not likable and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Okay, likability is important to a certain degree, but as we've witnessed in the last several election cycles, when it comes to Trump Clinton, Trump Biden, and now Trump Biden or whoever else, well, these are unlikable people that do have levels of support. So likability is actually going to be irrelevant. Now, with all that being said, I could be wrong. I mean, remember, this is one of the most unpredictable election cycles, if not the most unpredictable election cycle in our history, and anything can happen. But I will say that leaving Biden on the ticket would be an insult to every single American, especially Democrats and Democrat voters. It really isn't fair to them. What's scary, though, is how many people would still vote for Biden, even knowing he is a vegetable, even knowing his mental condition. A new poll was released that 85% of Americans believe that President Biden shouldn't run for re-election. Now, when you get to numbers like 85%, that includes a whole hell of a lot of independents and Democrats. I mean, that is not just about Republicans. That is a lot within his own party that don't want him. However, if he is the Democrat nominee, like sheep, people will still vote en masse for him. And it really says a lot about our politics that you're willing to vote for someone who does not have the mental capacity to be president because you despise Trump, because Orange Man is bad. And they certainly won't go and vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So despite all the failures of this administration, the race is still close and will continue to be close. And any Trump supporter who thinks that Trump is a guaranteed lock to win, you're only fooling yourself. Yeah, he may be doing well in the polls, but understand polls are nothing more than a snapshot in time. Remember, just look back at the red tsunami that never was in the 2022 midterm elections. You have President Trump that is facing 4 criminal indictments. And while it seems that these cases are falling apart, and I think these cases are all politically motivated, they are all politically motivated. They should never have been brought in the first place. But as these cases exist, they're going to divert attention. Not only are they going to divert attention, they're also going to divert a lot of money. It's not cheap to have all these lawyers fighting all these criminal charges against you. And so how much money is going to be spent on legal fees as opposed to campaign ads? How much time is going to be spent in the courtroom as opposed to the campaign trail? So this all matters. More importantly, the former president's worst enemy is himself. Just think about how bad of a week it was for Democrats. Think about how bad of a week it was for President Biden. Then the former president gives a rally speech on Saturday, and the media industrial complex, they were ecstatic. They were like, thank you, former President Trump. They were beyond joy to change the news cycle and cover Trump's comments rather than Biden's failures, rather than Biden's the mental capacity of the president of the United States. Because the former President Trump, he criticized Nikki Haley, asked where her husband was. Now her husband serves this country, and that's why he hasn't been by Haley's side. So it was just a dumb comment, completely irrelevant, but it gives Haley oxygen. And why? Why give her that oxygen? Why allow her to say that a civilian, fire back, that a civilian who has never served is criticizing a civilian who is serving his country patriotically. The optics are terrible, and for those that chalk this up to Trump being Trump, well, this doesn't help. And if you don't see that, you're blind. At this point, he shouldn't even be acknowledging Haley. She is completely irrelevant in this race. She doesn't represent any threat to him in the primary, and so there's no reason for the former president to be punching down. Then there's his NATO comments. Now, I'm a New Yorker. I understand exactly what Trump was trying to say. I get it. However, word choice does matter because how it's spun is going to change. This media is going to look for any way to change news cycles to make Trump look bad. We know that. But it's the way that Trump says things that opens him up for the criticism. Now, for the last 4 decades, NATO members weren't paying their required 2% of GDP towards defense spending. Many previous presidents complained about this, and I'm all the way back to Reagan. But they kept their criticisms behind closed doors. And guess what? Nothing changed. They still didn't pay their 2%. Then Trump comes into office, calls them out publicly, embarrasses them. And lo and behold, they increase their military spending and European countries begin to meet their obligations. Now, Trump does raise a very legitimate question. If countries refuse to live up to their end of the bargain when it comes to NATO and this alliance, why should they be defended? If countries are going to take advantage of us like that, are they really allies? Like, these are important questions. This is part of the problem in the United States, that we have so many dumb people and dumb policymakers that sit there and say, well, no, it's okay if they don't pay their 2%. We still have to defend them and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're from one of these foreign countries, why would you pay more into defense spending if you don't have to? You know you're going to get defended either way. So in order to force these countries to pay, you do have to threaten them. And understand, international politics, it's a chess match. Okay, you're going to have disputes with your allies. That's natural. He raises legitimate questions, but he hurts himself when he throws in stupid comments that he would tell the Russians to do whatever the hell they want with those countries. That's not helpful. And again, some of his supporters are going to criticize me, but understand, he doesn't need to appease you and make you feel good. They'll say, oh, well, the media is spinning his words. They're taking him out of context. Okay, so what? They're going to do that. You know they're going to do that, so why feed the beast? It doesn't matter what you think. You support him. You're going to vote for him no matter what. He doesn't need to throw the red meat out there at this point. He needs to win over voters. And if anyone tells you that this is a good strategy because it's helped him before, well, that person's a moron. You have many disaffected independents, moderate Democrats, blue dog Democrats, even liberal Republicans that grow more and more disenchanted with this administration each day, that don't like the Democrat Party's hard move to the left. They may not like Trump's personality, but they may consider voting for him given the damage that these far-left policies have wrought on them, their families, and their communities, and America. Trump will need as many voters as he could get in the 2024 elections, and he has to give people a reason to vote for him, not a reason to vote against him or to stay home. Politics isn't complicated. Expand your base, you win elections. Get more voters to turn out and support you, you win elections. This isn't complicated. Let the Democrats keep on digging. Don't punch down. Be careful what you say. Be more articulate. Talk about policy. Talk about a brighter future. You win the election. Okay, so Biden and Democrats threw in a hole. No reason for the former president throwing them lifelines. If he wants to win, be more careful with word choices. Focus on the failures of Biden's policies and how destructive they become, and not just Biden's policies. Okay, understand, you have to change that. Because who knows if Biden's going to be on the ticket. You got to call them Democrat policies because that's exactly what they are. Focus on the failures of Democrat policies and promote a more positive vision for the future of America, and you win. Talk about saving Western culture, Western civilization, prioritizing American exceptionalism. You win. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, please leave the P.A.S. report a 5-star rating. Take 30 seconds to write a review on any podcast platform that allows it. Share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll be back on Monday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.